L'chaim, everyone. L'chaim of the Vracha. I want to say L'chaim. Join me, L'chaim. We are gathered today for today is the 10th day of the month of Shvat, Yud Shvat, in the Jewish calendar of the year 5783, 5783. Exactly 73 years ago, on Yud Shvat 5710, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, was on Shabbos then, as I spoke this past Shabbos. The previous Rebbe was nostalgic. His soul went up to heaven. Now, at that time, the previous Rebbe was giving out, they were printing Hasidic discourses for Shabbos and special occasions. And the previous Rebbe had instructed to print a specific discourse, which he has said early, many years earlier, to be printed for that Shabbos. Not only that Shabbos, but for that Shabbos. And then 3 days later was his grandmother's yard site. And there was Purim, it was coming up. There was 4 special days coming up. And he instructed there was going to be a series. It was what's called in Chabad, Hasidic language. It's called a hemshech. A hemshech means a continuation. This was where a Rebbe would say a discourse on one day, and the next day he would continue and pick up from where he left off. Now, a hemshech could be for over a year. There's books that just one hemshech was over a whole year. The Rebbe spoke about an idea, one thread from the beginning all the way through, every single time continuing from where he took off. He didn't say I'm continuing from where I took off. He started it. You think it's a new piece, and you couldn't learn it as a new piece, but the idea really is a long continuation. So the previous Rebbe gave out for this one, not in one shot, but the first one was for that Shabbos, the 10th of Shvat. And the whole series was the whole Hemshech was 20 paragraphs. Each printing was for 4 special occasions, so each one 5 paragraphs for each one. In Chabad, they noticed on Shabbos after the fact that when it said the previous Rebbe's name, after they would write the Rebbe's name, they would have an acronym. They have an acronym. It's called Shalita. Shalita stands for the Hebrew words Sheyichye la'orech yamim tovim baruchim. He should live for many long years. The Yud for Yamim, days, in that it was missing. So in that acronym, that the Rebbe's name, and then he should live a good life, there was a letter missing from that. They realized the printing, they made a mistake after it was done. And of course, on that Shabbos, the Shabbos that the Rebbe printed this discourse for, is the Shabbos the Rebbe was nostalgic, as I mentioned. So they continued sending out the next 3 installments of this discourse, not the whole thing. The next year, a year later, now they were asking the Rebbe to become Rebbe for a whole year, and the Rebbe refused. The Rebbe refused to officially become the Rebbe. There are a number of stories where people had ideas, people knew, some of them connected with my personal family. I'll give you an example. My great-grandfather, my father's father's father. The custom is you give him what's called a pidyon. You write a letter to the Rebbe. It's called a pidyon nefesh, an exchange of the soul. Where you write the Rebbe your name and your mother's name, and you request whatever you're writing, whatever you want to write to the Rebbe, your personal requests that you have, your family, if you have family members, etc. So he came to give to the Rebbe after Yud Shvat at some point, maybe it was before Rosh Hashanah, and the Rebbe was telling everybody, everyone tried this trick. Everyone was trying to give it to the Rebbe to take it. The Rebbe would always say, go upstairs and put it on the previous Rebbe's table or chair, or go to the Rebbe's oil and read it over there. So in this specific case, he told my great grandfather, he said you should go upstairs and put it on the benkel, on the chair. So he told him, "Ich bin a Galizianer." What's a Galizianer? I don't know from any benkel. I don't know from no chairs. I mean, a Rebbe is a person. I'm not putting it on the chair and they give it to him. And the Rebbe took it from him. Another example was came Pesach for the Seder, and the custom in Chabad is that at the Rebbe's table, only the Rebbe would have a silver plate under his matzah, a silver Seder plate. Nobody else had a silver Seder plate. Before Pesach, the Rebbe asked my great uncle if he can do him a favor and purchase for him a silver Seder plate. So he quickly, he told his family, his brothers, of course, that this is a hint that the Rebbe was already going to, he was onto something. But officially, he wasn't the Rebbe. The 1 year anniversary on Yud Shvat in 1951, there was a Farbrengen in honor of the previous Rebbe's yard site. At that point, at some point in the middle of the Farbrengen, someone got up, the Rebbe was speaking. The Rebbe was the main speaker. Someone got up and said that, I don't know, remember exactly, not that I was there, but there's a recording of it. That we need the Rebbe to say Chassidus. Enough of the talks, the sichos, the talks. We need to have a Chassidic discourse. The Rebbe didn't respond to him, but in the course of that Farbrengen, the Rebbe said that in the mimer which the previous Rebbe gave out, in the discourse which the Rebbe had given out, and on the day of his passing, for the day of his passing. So it starts over there with the words "Basi Lagani," I've come to my garden, and then the Rebbe went into the I guess called the trance, the mimer trance, the tone of voice that they would say a mimer, where the Rebbes would say a mimer, which this goes all the way back to the Alter Rebbe. Basi Lagani Achoisi Kalo, and began to say the words with a tune, and you could hear the recording. The Rebbe was quiet, and he began to say the words with the tune. Then obviously, shh. Everyone was all moving, and shah. Why? Because that was the official moment that the Rebbe became the Rebbe. That he accepted upon himself to be the Rebbe was when we say a Hasidic discourse. That meant that the Rebbe was taking now upon himself the mantle of leadership to become Rebbe.
And so he began with a nigun.
Not a nigun as in the traditional sense, a nigun of a song, but he began to teach Torah in a specific nigun. The mimer that he says, when the Rebbe says a mimer, we say it in a specific tune of saying a mimer, and he began to say a mimer in this tune. That's how they knew there was a mimer. How do you know it's a mimer, not something else? There's a tune the way you say a mimer, a certain way you say it.
So it wasn't an announcement or anything. It was
No announcement. The Rebbe said, "Here, I hereby raise my hand and take the oath of office." No, nothing like that. As a matter of fact, it's a nigun that goes back all the way to the Alter Rebbe. How you say man? But
it was a year.
It was a 1 year exactly. But when the Rebbe would say a mimer, he would take a napkin or a handkerchief, and the Rebbe would tie it around his hand and hold his hand under the table. The Hasidic tradition is why the Rebbe would do this, because when the Rebbe says a mimer, a Rebbe it's a different category altogether of revealing Torah. It's a revelation directly from Sinai, as we would call it, and as such, a Rebbe could get onto a spirit. You can lose yourself spiritually when you get into a mimer. When the Rebbe would say a mimer, when you have such a type of a connection, you can expire from that type of a connection. So the Rebbe would hold on to something physical to ground him down here in this world. The Rebbe never said that's what the Hasidim would say. Or the Rebbe would always tie a kerchief around his hand. As a matter of fact, the last mimer that the Rebbe said, the Rebbe didn't say a mimer for many years. In the 80s, he stopped saying a mimer. But the last mimer the Rebbe said was in 1990, I believe, right before Pesach. And it was a different thing because the Rebbe, instead of sitting, the Rebbe always sat by a mimer. The Rebbe was standing up in front of the shul by the mimer, but he instructed them to sing the nigun before the mimer. And the Rebbe began, and the Rebbe took, you could see it, how the Rebbe takes the kerchief and ties it around and put his hand under his siddur in front of him. But there's a video of it. You can see how exactly what the Rebbe's, how the Rebbe tied his hand. But that's all the external side of it. The inner point is the words that the Rebbe spoke. And it was special words that the Rebbe spoke then because the Rebbe really laid out in this mimer exactly what his mission statement is going to be for the Jewish people. And now, every time I give a look back, you read it again, you study it again this year, you think of reflect on it for a moment. People were asking the Rebbe to become Rebbe. Everyone wanted to become the Rebbe. Not sure after they heard what the Rebbe had to say that they wanted it anymore, because the Rebbe was very, very strong in giving over the idea that he's not taking anybody for a ride with him. You guys are gonna have to do the work together with me. Not only you guys are gonna have to do the work, but as we'll say in a moment, the work is to bring Mashiach. Our job is to bring the Mashiach. And that's it. Is that we have no other job to do except for bring the Mashiach. That was a job that no one else ever spoke about. So that was something that was not necessarily exactly what people signed up for, but it was the call of the hour. It's exactly what our generation was all about, and the Rebbe spells it out in this first Hasidic discourse in the Maimer Basiligan. So I'll share tonight with you. I just want to share with you tonight a few highlights, really, about what the Rebbe said, and I think it's important that it can help us in our service of Hashem, in our own personal service of Hashem, in a very real and deep way. So that's what we'll try to do tonight at this Farbrengen. We'll try to share some words of inspiration taken from what the Rebbe shared and spoke about, and hopefully this will give us the connection. On Yud Shvat is the day that the Rebbe became the Rebbe. It's a day that every Chassid, we're all Chassidim over here, we're all Chassidim. Every Chassid has to ask themselves, how am I going to strengthen? How am I going to fasten that bond, that connection with the Rebbe? So that's the idea. That's what we're trying to do tonight. So l'chaim, everybody. Everyone say l'chaim, l'chaim, l'bracha. Welcome.
In the city. That was we're going to have a circuit tonight. It's being this week, next week. The plan.
That's next week. That's next week. You're early, very early. We don't have beds for you to sleep here. But you're early. All right. Welcome. There's some soup, hot soup behind you. We'll move over one more. There's hot soup behind you, and there's food over there. Everybody help yourself. L'chaim. He's in over here. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'broch, everybody. Give him a l'chaim. L'chaim, l'broch. And before we continue, I just want to say l'chaim to my brother-in-law. Yes, who's celebrating his birthday today. So Aaron Leib, Mazel Tov, Aaron Leib and Zelda should have a shnat bracha v'atzlacha in all areas of life, and he should be blessed from Hashem together with his wife and children with only revealed good. Chaim. as well. Today was the yahrzeit of Shendel Rochel ben Bas Yoel Halevi. Hashem should bless her neshama shav and aliyah. She should be an advocate on high for all of her family and all of us gathered here as well. L'chaim.
I didn't want to speak, I just came back to the audio. My father,
Moshe Avram ben Miriam. You should have a refuah shlema, complete and speedy recovery. L'chaim Livro.
Are you going to do
Am I going? Yes, Mitzvah tomorrow.
it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So the Rebbe writes like this. The words are like this in the Shir HaShirim, in the Song of Songs. Shlomo HaMelech writes, Bos, quoting from Hashem, the pasuk says, Bosi legani, achoisi kala. I've come to my garden, my sister, my bride. In the Medrash, on the spot, in the Medrash, it says like this. Legani, what does it mean to my garden? I've come to the garden. What does it mean to my garden? Why is God saying my garden? Lignuni. Lignuni is a place of like of hanging out, like a type of a room where people would hang out after a chuppah or something like that. It was like a room where people would chill and relax. I don't know what's the best word in English today for such type of room. A lounge, my lounge, or something like that. Something like that. That's what God, the Medrash says. What does God say? Come to my garden, to my lounge, my spot of relaxation. To the place where my essence was in the beginning. The Ikir Shechina betachtonim hoisa, because the essence of God's Shechina was down here in this world. Betachtonim, down here in this world. And the previous Rebbe takes this verse and begins to elaborate. What does it mean that God's presence was in this world? He goes on to explain how when God created the world, God's essence was here. Then there was the infamous sin of eating of the tree of knowledge by Adam. And what happened was the Shechina, God's presence, God's essence, God's most deepest awesomeness was removed by one level from this world. One level of separation. After Adam, there was the sin of Cain, and then Cain and Hevel. And it goes on to list 7 sins, which each major sin took God's presence one level further from the world. One, we call it the 7 heavens. Went up doesn't mean in space up, but it means concealed, one level deeper concealed. And this was a process, 7 layers of concealment. Until Avram Avinu. Avram began to reverse the trend. Avram took it from the 7th level of concealment, of removal, to the 6th level. Yitzchak brought it down another one. Yaakov another one. Until Moshe Rabbeinu, which he was the 7th, and all 7s are special, and he brought the Shechina, God's awesome presence down here, once again revealed in this world. When did it happen? At the giving of the Torah, at Mount Sinai. That was momentary. But then, the building of the Mishkan, when they built the tabernacle, God's presence dwelled in a revealed way in the tabernacle down here in this world. So Adam began a process of concealing. Avram began a process of revealing. Who was the one that brought it from the closest level of concealment to this world to revelation, what we would call revelation in this world? Moshe Rabbeinu. And the previous Rebbe goes on to explain in the Mishkan, the main service was the karbonis, bringing the sacrifices. And go on to explain exactly what that means, the sacrifices, and how the service and the sacrifices and what that meant in the service of God and the revelation of godliness in this world. And how the building was, the structure was made out of beams, kroshim. Kuf Rei Shin is keresh, a beam. Also has the letters sheker, false, lie. And we have to transform the sheker to be a being that holds up. What's the idea of the being? To hold up the roof on top. And the main idea, how does one reveal godliness in this world? Through iskafia and ishapkot. Quoting from the Zohar, if one controls themselves when they're tempted to do something inappropriate, you control yourself, you break that temptation. The Zohar says God's awesome presence is like there's like an explosion of God's presence in all of the worlds, all of the spiritual worlds, from one person's self-control. And ishapcha means transforming. What do you have to transform? But here's the key. You have to transform the shtus. Anyone ever heard the word shtus?
Yep, it means Bobomaitis.
Shtus. What's shtus?
Which is an ancient.
Oh, very good. The Mishkan was built from Atzei Shittim.
Interesting.
Very good. Etymologically, as Josh points out, Atzei Shittim, acacia wood, from the word shtus. That was the service of the Mishkan, to transform the shtus. The Gemara said, Ein Odom Oiver Aveira Ela Imkein Nichnas Beiruch Shtus. No person ever sins. It's impossible for a Jew to sin unless they've been overcome by a spirit of shtus, which means folly. When we are under the spell of shtus, of folliness, then we could sin. Otherwise, we would never sin. So we have to transform the spirit of folliness that causes us to sin and bring it to a spirit of folliness of kedusha, of holiness. And he brings, for example, the Talmud, the Gemara says, one of the rabbis, they would juggle by the simplest basis, they would juggle, and some people thought it was inappropriate, right? It's inappropriate. It's not the way rabbis should behave. Rabbis are not clowns. But the truth of the matter is, that's the greatest service of Hashem. To take the shtus, something of whatever, juggling, what's juggling, and to use it out for Hashem, for kedusha, for holiness. So this is what we have to do. And he goes on to explain how the service that we're talking about over here, God's presence, means down here in this world, really in this world, and not just how in this year, specifically this year's the 13th chapter, we focus on the 13th chapter in the cycle. We don't just mean how it emanates from God. There's God and there's an emanation that exists all the way down here. Remember, we're talking about God's essence and presence is in the lowest part of the world. That's where you can find God if you only reveal God over there. He elaborates on that. And at the end of the Maimer, the Rebbe basically discusses the idea of how a person, the Gemara says, a person should put their affairs in order. Now, don't push it off, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. No one ever knows what tomorrow is going to bring. So get your end of life affairs in order now. Get things done now, because no one ever knows when their day comes and when their time is going to be. So this is the in a nutshell, 20 chapters, a very big nutshell. A lot of esoteric ideas, a lot of Kabbalistic ideas the Rebbe fleshes out and explains beautifully. And in the 20 years, in the 20 paragraphs, every year, the Rebbe would take one paragraph and elaborate and discuss that paragraph in depth in his Hasidic Maimer. So 1951, the Rebbe discussed and focused on the first chapter of the previous Rebbe's Maimer. And he built basically Chabad Lubavitch today. If you want to know where does it all come from, if you learn that first Hasidic discourse, you'll have the answer to all your questions. All your questions, you'll find the trace back to there in that first Hasidic discourse, which was based on only chapter 1 of the previous Rebbe's Maimer, again, that he gave out for the actual day that he passed. He instructed to print it and to be studied on the day of his passing, and the Rebbe took it as this was his last will and testament. That's what the Rebbe said. This is what he gave out, he knew what was happening. He gave it out because this is what the Rebbe wanted us to study. This is what we need. So now let's focus on what the Rebbe said in that first Maimer a little bit, because it's very important for everybody here. Why is it important for everybody here? Why is it? It's very important for everybody here. And anyone listening? The Rebbe basically said that we are the seventh generation. We, me and you, and everybody else, we're all part of the seventh generation. What's the objective of the seventh generation? To bring God's Shekhinah to be revealed in this world. That's our job. All the previous 6 generations brought it to, they handed the baton to us. And now it's our job, like Moshe Rabbeinu was the 7th one, and he made it happen. He brought the Shekhinah down into this world in a revealed way. That's the job for me and you.
Is it related to Shabbos also?
Shabbos is the day when Hashem's presence is revealed. Related to Shabbos, yeah.
Wasn't the Rebbe the 7th Rebbe?
The Rebbe was the 7th Rebbe from the Alter Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, that's our mission, to bring the Mashiach. He didn't say in the words to bring the Mashiach. He said, our mission is to make the Shekhinah down here in this world, in the tangible reality that me and you exist. So now, why is this message, why is this so important? Why is it so critical? And let's understand for a moment how relevant this is. Someone can ask the simple question. When you go outside and you look in the world, you don't see God. You see what the Kabbalists call klipa. Klipa means a shell, a covering, concealment. Or they call it sometimes sitra achra. Sitra achra is Aramaic for the other side. Not the side of holiness, the side of unholiness. When you go outside in the world, that's what you see. Outside of the 4 walls of this room, that's what exists outside in the world. And as time passes, the klipa becomes thicker, the concealment becomes thicker, and the other side seems to be gaining strength. It seems to be getting stronger and stronger. So one can ask themselves, since God created the world in such a way, in other words, God created a world of concealment. God created a world of klipa. God created the world, that's the natural state of the world, where God is concealed. So what do he wants from me? I should go break God's creation. If God created this way, he must have, he knew what he was doing. God knew what he was doing. So what do you want from me? So if I want to be a Jew and connect to Hashem, the way is to detach from the world, because the world is all about concealment. If you want to have a connection and revelation, detach from the world, and that's where you'll find attachment and revelation. And if we stop and think about it, this idea, everyone can think about it in their own way, in different versions, they're all saying the same thing. This is the way it exists. Each one in our own personal life, we say this many times, in different ways, shapes, and different forms. So over here is where the Rebbe enlightened us to something so important. It's so important. And that is, when God created the world, there was revelation. The default position of the world is revelation, not concealment. Concealment was when the world was manipulated, when it was changed, when it became a problem. Through Adam Arishan's first sin, through that first sin of Adam and Chava, they ruined what God made. Our objective is only to return it back to the way it was originally. We're not changing the world from the way it is, in its natural way. We're returning the world to the way it's supposed to be. When you have a car, and the wheel, you buy a brand new car, you assume you buy a brand new car that the wheels are aligned properly. After you drive around with it for every amount of time, it's going to be, the wheels are not going to be aligned so well. They are flat, you get a this, you get a that, you change the tire. So you go for a wheel alignment. Is the wheel alignment changing the way, I don't know, it's returning the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it was originally. I'm only putting it back to the way it was originally. That's the message, that's the idea. So a Jew doesn't, it's such a difference in our service of Hashem, this perspective changes so profoundly the way one serves Hashem. What am I doing over here? What's asked of me? As a Jew, right now, wake up, what's asked of me today? What does God want from me? What's my mandate over here today? We're not asking you big things. We're asking you to do whatever you could to return this world the way it was originally. Get rid of the schmutz. Clean up the schmutz so you'll see the beauty. How do you clean up? How do you do that? So that's through, as I said, skafia and ishapcha, the two services of self-control and transformation. We have to transform the shtus, the spirit of folly. Yeah, everyone does acts of irrational behavior every single day. Thank you. Everyone acts irrationally every single day.
Is that why they use like
Always.
Friday night?
We don't even realize that we're acting irrationally. Except
Bring the light back to-
rational behavior exists over here. Usually when we act irrational, it's because we're dipping below. We're going down. Our irrational behavior is because we're being dragged downward. What's asked of us is to take that strength, the powerful energy that we have to act irrationally, except don't do it for the wrong, do it for the right reason. Do it for the godly reason. And that spirit is stronger than this rational thing. There's a beauty in irrationality. There's a beauty that's found over there that we need to tap into. In the Bavish is known, Chabad is known today for to stand on the street, ask the Jew to put on film, ask a lady to give Shabbos candles, right? I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I'm ready to bet you that if you stand on the corner asking Jews, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, sir, are you Jewish? You will have not experienced a more humbling thing in your life. It's not a very comfortable thing.
That was to look at you like you're crazy.
It's not a very comfortable thing to do. When you're younger, the younger you are, the easier it is to do. The older you get, the harder it is to do. Why? Because the younger people are tapping into that spirit of shtus for kedusha. Crazy thing. You can stand on the street, stop people, ask them if they're Jewish, and they're Meshuggah. What, you went crazy? What are you doing on the right? The answer is yes. We are crazy in a good way. We're crazy. We're using our spirit of folly, our spirit of shtus, that energy that only exists somewhere deep within us for the purposes of kedusha and holiness. Why? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? What's the objective? We're not looking to make a change in the world. We're actually looking to get rid of the change in the world. All we want is to return the world back to the way it was. That's what we're trying to do. And that took 7 generations. Originally, it took from Avram to Moshe Rabbeinu to do. And the Rebbe says over there, so I ask you a simple thing. Imagine for a moment you were sitting in 1951 in the room, and you hear the Rebbe telling you, I know up until now you guys had one type of worldview and one type of spirit, one type of Judaism. But now we're going to revolutionize the whole thing over here. And our job now is to bring the Mashiach. You want me to be your leader? All right, no problem. I'm yours. But we got to bring the Mashiach. You're in or you're out now. We're not just looking for some hot potato kugel on Shabbos. We're not looking for a l'chaim at the Kiddush. We're not looking for some beer, some cold beer at a shalashudas or at a tish. That's not what it's all about. It's about bringing Mashiach. This was something that it remains till today. Until the Mashiach comes, unfortunately, we have not yet merited this revelation. We have to open up our eyes, as the Rebbe said, Mashiach is here. What the problem is us, not the Mashiach. We haven't yet adjusted our lenses to be able to see properly. That means we have more work to do on ourselves and our surroundings. So l'chaim, this was one idea. L'chaim livrach, everybody.
To make a- Well, is that why a woman is like?
Well, what?
Is that why a woman really likes that the sin of?
Yes, that's why women have a special mitzvah to bring light into the world.
Like counting.
Yeah.